If you're the sewer in your circle of friends and family, odds are you've been asked to sew a patch on a time or two. And if you've ever done it and felt like, I'm never doing that again, I don't care how much they beg, let's just iron it on instead, then I think you're going to enjoy this episode where I show you how to sew a patch on a stretchy pair of shorts. I offer a service where I consult for manufacturers to help them to handle different trims or items and how to get them sewn on quickly, efficiently, so that the item is sustainable. In other words, that the patch, after you sew it on, stays on and doesn't get ripped off easily. And also so that the sewing operators don't injure themselves from the repetitive motion of sewing one patch on over another. So I recently did this consultation for a company, and I thought, why not film it so that you all get to benefit from how to apply a patch onto a stretchy pair of shorts. One of the issues you're faced with when sewing a patch on a fabric like this, which is extremely stretchy in all directions, is if you were to try to sew on a patch that has been backed with a fusible web, well, you might think, oh, I can just iron it on. Well, some fabrics don't allow you to iron on. Some fabrics, if you iron, it melts the fibers, especially stretch fabrics. So instead of fusing on, I'm going to use our liquid-based glue and apply it to the back of the patch. So you can just do a thin line of glue around the perimeter. And that is the most important area to have some be on it. You could also just do a dot and a little dot and a dot. So you don't have to do a solid line. And then an X marks the spot across the back. Now you can position your patch. Nope, first we just do a light sliding of the finger over the glue, and that will make it easier to adhere onto your shorts. A light tap, you don't want to push down hard, a real light tap on that is all you need, and then you wait for that to dry. So if you're a manufacturer and you have lots of shorts to sew, you would just put one patch on and set it down and do the next. Now we have to figure out what is the best needle and thread to use. The needle options that you can use for this is you can suit it up to the patch, which is most commonly what you're going to be forced to do. If you get a patch that's really heavy, that has a lot of thread on it, an embroidered patch, like in this instance, you're going to need a sharper needle than I can use on a stretch fabric. This patch is really, really lightweight. In fact, I could build that up with a satin edge foot and make that even bigger. Next, your thread options are to match your thread to the black stitching line that goes around, or you can use a monofilament thread. And the monofilament thread that you should be using is always 100% nylon, not monopoly, not polyester. And that's because nylon thread stretches and comes back to its original size or shape, and that is what our fabric does here. It stretches and it comes back to its original shape. So if you use a polyester thread, in this instance, only when I'm speaking about monofilament, you're just going to get a much better experience with the nylon version of the monofilament, which you'll find on our website in varying sizes of spools. The nylon lingerie thread is fabulous in the bobbin for this, partly because it also stretches and stretches back, comes back to its original shape like your stretch fabric, and it'll pair nicely like the right food with wine. You want the monofilament thread that's nylon on top and the lingerie thread on the bobbin, and that's because lingerie thread is soft. it doesn't scratch the skin. So if this rubs against somebody's body on the bobbin thread, isn't going to cause any chafing. You could also use our satin edge foot and stitch all the way around, but when you do that, you have to drive the car. You have to steer your shorts around in a circle, and that can be a problem because the shorts itself, you'd have to open it up in order to get it to, or you have to kind of contort it to make it lay flat. And we don't want to stretch these out of shape. We want to make sure that the shorts, you can't even tell how it was sewn on. It's just going to be so perfect. In this particular instance, I'm going to opt to use a free motion foot instead of a regular foot. That way I can take the fabric and make a circular motion instead of that driving the car motion of steering with your fabric going around. These are great for some types of sewing. In this particular technique is great. Now, if you were going to have to sew a whole bunch of these on, say you have an event and you have a whole bunch of people coming and they're all going to be wearing the same pair of shorts, and you want to sew patches on everybody's shorts, and you want to do it in maybe a half an hour instead of a few days, then this is the way to do it. We're going to take our octi hoops and choose which hoop is the best based on the size of the garment and the size of the patch. I'm going to go ahead and use the smallest of the 3 frames. As long as the patch itself fits within the area and you have a section that is bigger going around, in other words, as long as the patch doesn't take up the whole circumference of that. If it did, then we would go to the next hoop, and now we have all this area to work with. Of course, it still has to be able to fit inside of the shorts. So I'm going to use the smallest of the 3 octi hoops. Inside of the kit, you get some stick and tear stabilizer, and it allows us to hoop things that normally can't be hooped. Since I've shown using invisible thread before in the how to sew patches on a leather vest, if you have that job coming up for you, be sure to check out that video. I'll go ahead and give you a link for that video. I'm going to go ahead and use the nylon lingerie thread on the top and the nylon lingerie thread in the bobbin, but I'm going to use white in the bobbin and black on top. To recap, I have the nylon lingerie thread wound on a bobbin and the nylon lingerie thread in black on the needle. I've removed my machine's original snap-on adapter, and I'm going to put this on in its place. This is the best style of free motion foot for sewing patches on because it isn't a full circle, so you can see the direction that you're going to go with it. This has a spring on it as well. So if you're a manufacturer, you want to make sure you get a free motion or darning foot that has a spring action built into it. And that spring, or this bar, on a domestic sewing machine goes over the needle bar. So make sure that you tighten down the needle bar screw with a screwdriver, but don't go too tight because you can break those screws right off. Just a little bit more than finger tight. And then as the needle goes up and down, the bar gets hit and the foot hops up and down, and it's timed so that when the needle leaves the patch or leaves the fabric, the foot is holding down for a brief second so that the needle can't lift the fabric with the needle's bump on the back of the needle. That shape, it tends to kind of make the fabric lift up. So the free motion foot is going to be very helpful in this situation. Now I just use a regular old pen and trace around the outer perimeter of the hoop. We do have a wide variety of different sizes of the stabilizer, so you could get one for each size of the hoop, and the sizes are listed on our website. You can also get up to 300 feet of the stabilizer at once, and that does help with cost. If you don't want to invest that much, we have all the way down to 10-foot size rolls. I'm going to just go ahead and use my paper scissors to cut around the design that I've drawn But you could also have placed the Octi-Hoop on a rotary cutting mat and used your rotary cutter and gone around. I just find it easier to use scissors. All right, let's go ahead and set that aside. The easiest way to separate this from the release liner is to just kind of peel back on one corner. And then I fold it down and crease or fold back the paper. This is actually polyester, non-woven, tearaway stabilizer, and this is the release liner that I will be disposing of. So we're not actually sewing through paper. We're sewing through a product that the needle won't have any trouble sewing through. And this product is something that my father invented. We are the original company for adhesive bag tearaway stabilizer. So if you want a product that doesn't gum up your needle, this is the one. There we go. Now you can see I have some creases right here, and that means it won't be strong. So I'm going to go ahead and lift and reposition and pulling away from the center of the hoop as I go around to ensure that this is as taut as possible. And the reason for that is because we don't want to have to stretch that stretch fabric, because then you'll have wrinkles or puckering all around the patch, and that is not the look we're going for. Next, we want to cut a hole in this that's bigger than the smiley face patch. You can see the patch, and now we can just do a rough sketch, making sure that we've got a good amount of space around it, and go ahead and cut that out. And now you can take that stabilizer and put it back on the release liner and use that another time for a patch of a hole created from embroidery being pulled out of a hoop. If that doesn't make sense, be sure to watch more of my videos, because I explain all this stuff, and it is a lot because the Creative Feet products are capable of just so many different things. Now, I want to make sure that I position the smiley face as much in the center as possible. And I can feel it as well, which helps position it in here. And we're just making sure that the smiley face itself is in the hole. And then you just rub the fabric so that it is now secure to the stabilizer itself. See how it lifts the frame? And that means that we're sewing with no stabilizer at all behind the patch, which is ideal because we don't want to have anything underneath this to rub against the leg of the person that's going to be wearing it. And with the Octi-Hoops, you also get these little handles, so you can position a handle on the frame itself, and you can have a handle on both sides so that you can just draw like this. Now, I know when I say just draw like this, some of you are thinking, oh yeah, she just says it's so easy to just like draw around. To practice, you can take and put a piece of paper beneath the needle and move it to just get to train your brain. But you can also do a little rehearsal before you actually start running the machine at the sewing machine itself, like this. I'm taking and I'm just sliding this beneath the foot, and there are little channels on each corner that make it so your foot can slide beneath. And then you're going to hold on to the handle and practice that movement. Practice going around. Keep your eye a little bit ahead of where you're going. And just keep practicing that until you feel like you've got it. Now, if you don't feel like you're sure, you can lower the needle so that it's really close to the fabric, and then keep an eye on it and see how accurate you are. And once you feel confident, then you just, using a straight stitch, you can turn the hand wheel to bring the needle down and bring it back up again. Pull that bobbin thread up through the fabric. We're going to use a lighter thread tension on the top, just to make sure we don't bring that bobbin thread up from the bottom. Lower the foot, and with your finger down on the thread, sew a couple stitches back, and then come back up this way. Then cut your tails. And keep your eye focused ahead of where you're going. You could go this way, since you have the open toe. You can see where you're going. And then you just sew. And as you're sewing, you want to keep your elbows down. And then you just sew a little bit back over again to tie a knot. And then cut your thread, lift the foot, slide the hoop out, and then you just lift it up, and you're ready to sew the next patch on using the same method. And everything looks beautiful. This is what it looks like on the back. If you enjoyed learning how to sew a patch on these stretchy shorts, you'll probably also like learning how to sew them on a baseball cap. If you do, be sure to hit the like and subscribe button so that you don't miss out on any of my videos. Oh, that's right. Don't forget to hit the bell, because the bell is what notifies you that the video is released. Oh, and by the way, I also have an online school, Create with Claire Rowley. Be sure to join my school so we can get to know each other better, and you can share pictures and ask questions and become part of my community. With that, I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye.